Welcome back, everyone. Robbie here. This is episode number 3 of our poker vlog. Today, we're diving into the high roller scene where players have bought in for $2,250. The competition is fierce, the strategy is on another level, and I'll be taking you along for the ride as I try and navigate this intense environment, sharing my thoughts, insight, and behind the scenes action. Let's dive into it.
I'm walking alone, the streets are empty. The only thing I can see is my own silhouette. I'm getting stronger, step by step. The clock is ticking, but there's no time for regrets. I've been flying from town to town, from London to Taiwan. I've been all around the globe trying to protect your soul. We are heroes tonight. We will fly above the sky. We are heroes tonight.
Not gonna lie, I'm a little nervous, but I feel ready. Ready for this one.
Tonight, we will fly above the sky.
I've had a good last week or so. Yeah, we're gonna try and spin up the stack and make something out of this day. Pretty excited. Let's get it. In the first hand of this tournament, we're in the big blind, sitting in the 5 seat. We look down at 9-8 of diamonds. The 7 seat limps, and the 2 seat raises it to 300. We make the call here. The 7 seat also makes the call. We're going 3 ways to a flop with a nice suited connector. On the flop, we see King, King, 8 with 2 hearts. A pretty good flop for us, as we have kings and 8s. We're going to go ahead and check to the aggressor. The 7 seed also checks, and the 2 seed bets 500. We're not going anywhere with our 2 pair here, and the 7 seed also makes the call. On the turn, we see the 2 of clubs. It doesn't change much besides the backdoor club draw being 1 card closer to a flush. The heart flush doesn't get there, and we check to the aggressor in position, who leads out for 2,000, which is a pretty large sizing. It's about 3/4 pot, and my plan here was to check call with our 2 pair. It's too strong to fold at this point. We are worried about our 9 kicker, but I think my opponent can do this with weaker 2 pair hands like 7s or 6s, and I don't think he would bet this strong with trip kings. We see a 9 of hearts on the river, and it's good in that we improve to a higher 2 pair, but also the heart flush gets there, and for that reason I go with the plan of check calling. The 2 seat does also check back and shows 7-8 offsuit, so our 9 plays with our higher 2 pair. We chip up a little bit here, and I'm okay with the way this hand went. I suppose I could have went for thin value on the river, but I'm not sure our opponent would have called, and it's also hard to put him on that specific hand with the pre-flop action. Normally when I sit down in a tournament, I like to observe my opponents for a couple of rounds and try and pick up on some player tendencies. Today we are thrown right into the mix, getting playable hands early, and the only opponent we are familiar with is the player on our right. We know he went to Stanford, we know he's good, and we are assuming everyone is good, as this is a high buy-in tournament and people aren't messing around. Pre-flop, the 8 seat limps, the 9 seat raises to 700. I call with 6-4 clubs in the big blind, and the 8 seat also calls, going to a flop. Going to a flop 3-handed, it's 6-7 deuce with 2 spades. We have a middle pair and a backdoor flush and straight draw. It's pretty good for our big blind range, but I want to check to the aggressor with the plan of check calling. It checks around and we're going to a turn. On the turn, we see the 8 of clubs. It's time to start building this pot, as we have 15 outs to now make a straight flush or two pair on the river, we go with half size pot, and the 9 seat, the initial raiser, does make the call, so we're going heads up to a river. On the river, we see the 5 of hearts. We hit our out to the straight, and we're trying to find a size to target worse hands like over pairs to the board, 2 pairs, or even top pair, and we go with half pot. The opponent in the 9 seat makes the call, and we take down a nice pot. So this tournament's a pretty deep structure. We currently have 650 big blinds in level 1. We look down at ace-king offsuit under the gun. We raise it up to 300, and the button and both blinds call. So we're going 4 ways to a flop. Going to a flop 4-handed, we see 10 jack-jack rainbow. We have 2 overs and the draw to a straight. We are going to continue betting here for half pot, try and get this heads up, and just the 1 seat call, so we can narrow their range down to some straight draw like king queen or 8-9, or maybe they have a 10x holding and perhaps trip, so we will need to proceed with caution on the turn. On the turn, we see the 4 of spades. It's really not a great card for us, doesn't help us in any way. And we're going to slow down and check here to the 1 seat who has position on us and plan on a check call here. Maybe we can see an ace king or queen on the river to improve. As played, we check, the button bets 1200, and we make the call and go to a river. On the river, we get no help. We see the 4 diamonds. At this point, I've basically given up on the pot. We have ace high. Go ahead and check with the plan of folding to any bet size with any jack or 4 making a full house, or a 10x hand having a better 2 pair. And he shows queen 10 after he checks back to take down the pot. Next, we're under the gun. We look down at a really nice hand, king queen suited. We raise it up to 3x the big blinds, which have now gone up to 100, 200. The raise to 600, just the 8 seat calls. We seem to be playing a lot of hands against the 8 seat, so we're going to a flop, heads up. We nail the flop. It comes king 6-9 rainbow. I go ahead and bet out 1,000 targeting worse holdings. The 8 seat has been active and he does make the call, so we're going to a turn. The turn is the 2 of hearts. We pick up the second nut flush draw and we continue firing for over half pot, 2,000 targeting draws and worse holdings, and our opponent does make the call. We see the 6 of diamonds on the river. It does pair the board, and our opponent is likely ahead now if he has any 6x holding, so we go with a sizing of 3,000, less than half pot, to try and target a worse 2 pair holding, and our opponent does make the fold, so our top pair is good and we get some good value out of this hand. Next, we're in the big blind. We look down at ace-5 of hearts. The 8 seat limps and the button limps. When it gets to us, between just calling, but I also don't want to play this hand out of position necessarily, so I go with a raise to try and take this down pre-flop, but also because it's a good hand to raise with, so I bump it up to 1,000 and just the 8 seat calls, so we're back up against the 8 seat, heads up, going to a flop. The flop comes king deuce 3 with 2 clubs. We don't exactly nail it, but we're going to continue representing a strong hand. A lot of kings are in our raising range pre-flop, so I go ahead and bet just below half pot, 1,000. The 8 seat though shows a lot of strength as he re-raises to 2,500, so maybe he was slow playing a stronger hand, limping pre-flop. At this point, I am debating between folding and calling. It's 1,500 to call with 5,700 in the middle, and I do go with the call. I think it's a fine fold, but I am drawing to a straight, and my ace could also still play if he does this with king X. The queen of diamonds comes on the turn. And we go ahead and check it to the aggressor, who checks it back. At this point, we're not feeling too good, hoping for a 4. And on the river, we see a jack of clubs that completes the flush, and we are giving up on this hand. We check our ace high over. The 8-seed checks it back and shows king jack, so we lose this pot. In this next hand, we're in the big blind with queen 5 of hearts. We're definitely defending this, and we've been playing a lot of big blind defending hands today. The cutoff puts out a raise but does not verbalize it since it's just 1/1000 chip. So this is interesting. We know he wants to raise, but it's ruled a call. The Stanford graduate to our right kindly points this out. So we go to a free flop. Of course, we absolutely smash the flop. King, Jack, 9, all hearts. We flop the second nuts. We know that the cutoff wanted to raise pre-flop. We check it over to the aggressor. He bets out for 600, nearly pot size, and we're happy to just make the call. We don't want to scare him off and raise here. We want to have him keep betting with his strong hand, so we're going to a turn. The turn is the 9 of clubs. It goes check, check. I'm not happy about this. And the river comes the queen of diamonds. We're going to go ahead and try and get some value here. We lead out for 1,000, just over half pot to hopefully get called by worse. Even with the full house on the board, our opponent definitely would have bet the turn with any type of set. And our opponent shows aces. So we win with the flush, and we're annoyed that we did not get more out of this hand, starting from pre-flop through the turn. Maybe we could have let out on the turn, but our line didn't exactly go according to plan. We win the pot, but I feel like we made the minimum on this hand, and it's a little disappointing. In this next hand, the 8-seed limps again to 300, and now we know that the 8-seed's capable of limping hands like King Jack and maybe some other strong hands. So we don't see a point in raising. And we have a hand much stronger than Queen 5 of hearts. We have Queen 6 of hearts. In the small blind, 100 to see a flop. Of course we're going to do it. And we're going to go 3 ways to a flop, which comes Ace 8 Jack with 2 hearts. We have a great flush draw to the second nuts with the Ace of the hearts on the board. The 8-seed goes ahead and bets 1,500, which is nearly pot size, and we are going to make the call with our draw to the second nuts, and we're going to a turn. We absolutely nailed the turn. We see the 5 of hearts. We now hold the second nuts. We're going to continue to check call, and I don't see the point in raising here. So when the 8-seed leads out for 3,300, I call with the plan of raising on the river if we see a good card for us, or leading out on the river. Going to the river, we see the 5 of clubs, and I don't really see a point in leading out here. Our opponent has been aggressive on every street, and we're just hoping he puts in a third barrel here and we can make the call and take down this pot. There are hands like pocket 8s, aces, and jacks that improve to a full house that we're now losing to, and for that reason I do take the conservative route and check. And unfortunately, the 8-seed just checks back and then mucks his hand, so we take down a nice pot with another heart flush. We've almost made it to our first break when we look down at King Queen of hearts. The hearts just keep coming today. We're in early position. We bump it up to 1,100 with the blinds up to 200, 300. The 8-seed, now our nemesis, raises us to 3,300, and I think this is just way too nice of a hand to fold at this point. So I contemplate my options and I go with the call here, proceeding with caution, going to a flop. Going to a flop, I'm thinking, what is his 3-betting range pre-flop? I have not seen him 3-bet too many hands, so I'm putting him on Ace Deuce through Ace 5 suited, Ace 10 to Ace King suited and offsuited, and pocket 8s through pocket aces, but I'm really not sure. I'm going into this flop with little information. On the flop, we smash it. It's king, queen, jack with 2 clubs. We are not holding any clubs, but we do have the backdoor flush draw. At this point, I don't want to check to my opponent and let him take control of this pot. I'd rather get chips in now on the flop, and for that reason, I lead out for 4,000. Now, my opponent thinks about it for a bit, and then he immediately raises us to 11,000. So now I am in the tank a little bit.
Raise to 11,100.
I'm now trying to piece together my opponent's range. Why would he raise on this flop with something like the nuts with ace 10? And we are blocking pocket kings and pocket queens with our king queen holding. So if he has top set or a middle set, I would think he also would want to call and see a turn where he could then get us to continue betting into his stronger holding. So I really don't want to see a turn that's a club and be in a tough place. After contemplating for a little bit, I decide let me go for the 4-bet here with the plan of folding to an all-in. If he has ace 10, so be it. But I make a strong play here. I 4-bet my opponent to 25,000. We have top 2 pair. We have outs to the full house, which would be the nuts. And I just don't think my opponent would make this play holding ace 10. I'm pretty nervous right now because if our opponent shoves, I'll have a tough decision. I probably would fold for our tournament life. The opponent goes into a tank for a long time. And eventually the 8-seed does make the fold, our play gets through, and I'm okay with the way we played this one. Flopping top pair with draws to straights and flushes. I'd rather get the chips in on the flop, and I'm fine to get a fold at this early stage in the tournament. So we've made it through the first 3 levels. There are 90 entries, and the prize pool's approaching 200,000. 67,000, and then we were back down to like 62, but at the end of level 3 we just had a massive hand with this 8-seed we've been battling with on a few hands. I just hit a flush on him on a smaller pot, but we had king, queen of hearts, early position. I raised to I think 1100, he re-raised to 33, and I called. Flop came king, queen, jack with 2 clubs. I bet, he checked, I bet 4,000, he raised to 11,000. Now, I think I'm blocking pocket kings and pocket queens here. There's only one combination of each of those hands. And then obviously, there's a jack on the board, you could have pocket jacks, but less combinations of that. And I think the most likely hand was maybe aces or some ace-x. Anyways, if he's on a club draw here or any one pair, I didn't want to see a turn necessarily. A turn would be a club turn would put me in a really tough spot because I was not holding a club. So I thought about it for a little bit in the tank, and I decided, I'm going to go with the 4-bet here. I still have 30k behind. If he shoves and he does have ace 10, maybe I find the fold and I lose half my stack. But I made the play. We raised to 25k, and he did fold, so it was a good play. I think I really would rather make that play on the flop than be in a position on the turn where I don't know where I stand in the hand. But I don't think he had a set, and I don't think he had a straight. So we figured that out on the flop, and we're sitting, I think, above 70,000 now, maybe 75,000 chips. So we're going back into level 4. Let's run it up. At the beginning of level 4, the first notable hand, we're in the big blind again, and we look down at 5-3 offsuit. The 8-seed limps, the small blind calls, and we have an easy check option, so we're going 3 ways to a flop. We flop pretty well, middle pair with a gut shot to the straight, and it checks around on the flop. The turn is good for us. It's a 6 of diamonds, pairs the board, and I think it's better for our range than the 8 seat who has been limping some Broadway type hands like King Jack. So when we check to him, he leads out for 2,000, and this just seems like he's trying to steal the pot with an ace high or something like that, and we call. On the river, we see the deuce of diamonds. We're going to continue to check here. We have a pretty weak holding, and we're just happy to get to showdown. At this point, if our opponent does have a hand like ace-6 or ace-deuce, he's definitely going to bet for value. So when the 8 seat checks, we turn over our 5-3 offsuit, a beast of a hand, and we take down a nice 6,000 chip pot. We go card dead for a lot of level 4, just folding pre-flop. In this one, we have position and the button, and we have a premium. Not really, but it's Deuce-six offsuit, and we're trying to get involved in some action. Folds to us, and we limp in for 500. I normally would not play this hand. As played, we limp, and both blinds do call, so we're going to a flop 3 ways. We see a great flop for us. It's 10 deuce-deuce with 2 hearts. When both blinds check, we're going to put in a value bet here of 1,000, trying to get value from flush draws, lower pocket pairs, and 10x holdings. We're surprised to see both blinds call, so we're going 3-handed to a turn. On the turn, we see the king of diamonds. It's pretty safe for us, and when both blinds check, I'm continuing to bet here for value, trying to get calls from worse hands, and I go with a smaller sizing, less than half pot at 2,300, and just the 8 seat call, so we're going to a river. When the opponent calls us on 2 streets, I'm trying to think through his calling range. I'm thinking a 10x holding like 10-7 or 10-8. I know my opponent likely isn't holding pocket 10s or pocket kings. On the river, we see the 7 of hearts. It does complete the flush draw. That's one of the cards I did not want to see because it's likely our opponent could be calling with a flush draw. When he checks to us, I'm happy to just check back and flip over a deuce-six offsuit, and we're surprised to see he has 10 deuce, so he flopped the full house. I guess we kind of lost the minimum here. I'm okay with the way we played this hand. Even though it's not a very good hand, I wouldn't recommend playing deuce-six offsuit. In this next hand in level 5, we look down at a nice suited connector, King Jack of hearts. Early position opens to 1,300, and we're okay to make the call here. The 6 seat calls, and then the 8 seat, our nemesis, raises to 4,500, a pretty big raise here. And going through my options here, I think it's an okay hand to call with. I would have rather been the 3-better, but as played, the early position player calls, and now I have a pretty good price to see a flop with a big pot building. So I do call, and the 6 seat also calls, so we're going 4 ways to a flop with a pretty big pot. When the early position player calls pre-flop, I'm getting a 3,600 chip call to see a flop with about 15,000 in the middle. As played, the 6 seat calls, and the pot's 20,000 on a 9-6 deuce rainbow flop. Pretty awful for us. We have a backdoor flush draw, and the 8 seed continues firing into 3 opponents for 10,000, and I just believe that he's strong here, and I don't want to get too involved chasing a straight or a flush, which are both backdoor draws and not super likely. So we just fold, and we lose a good amount of big blinds. Before this next hand, I just want to say I missed recording a pocket jacks hand where we 3-bet pre-flop and then an ace-high board came, and we wound up folding, but we did lose another 5,000 to 6,000 chips on that hand. Right after the pocket jacks hand that we lose, we pick up ace-king offsuit, a nice premium. Early position limps, and the 4 seat to our right, who we have not been involved with really in any hands, raises it up to 2,000, 4 big blinds, and we're going to put in a 3-bet here with our premium holding. I think it's a good hand to 3-bet with pre-flop, and we choose a sizing of 6,000, which I think is fine. It's 3x the original raise. Winds up folding back around to the 4 seat, aka Stanford. and he puts in the 4-bet to 16,000. Now I'm pretty worried that he is on a premium like aces or kings. We have not played many hands against him, and we have not seen him 4-bet pre-flop, so I can really narrow his range down to pocket queens, pocket kings, or pocket aces. Maybe he does this with ace king suited. We should be blocking aces and kings since we see 2 of them, but as played, he puts in the 4-bet to 16,000, and I'm between a fold and a call here. I've just been chipping down to almost starting stack again, and I really do want to see a flop with our premium holdings here. Some players might do a 5-bet here or something like this, but this player is extremely tight, and that is why I just go with the call here. So we're going heads up to a flop. This is the biggest heads up pot we've played of the day, and we're going to a flop with 33,000 in the middle. We see 10, 7, queen with a heart and 2 clubs. We have the gut shot to the nuts and 2 overs, so basically nothing. Stanford asks for a count of our chips. We show him we're sitting around 45,000, and I definitely want to peel one more card here. And when Stanford puts in a down bet of 10,000, I snap call to show strength, and also I don't want to act like I'm contemplating in case we do want to represent a stronger hand on future streets. But at this point, I'm pretty convinced he has aces or kings. The pot is now way out of hand. I don't even have a pot size bet behind, but we see a 7 of hearts turn. It's not really good for either of our ranges. My opponent knows I shouldn't have many 7Xs in my hands. I would have folded pocket 7s pre-flop and a 7. He's probably thinking this, but what is in my range is pocket 10s and pocket queens. So my opponent thinks for a bit and does check, and I check back happy to see a river card, and I'm thinking about ways I can potentially win this pot. River, we see the jack of diamonds or the 4 of diamonds. We have ace high with 53,000 in the middle and just over 35,000 behind. I don't know how I got here, but when Stanford checks to me, I just have one thing running through my head: can I get this bluff through? And if I can get this bluff through, I'm going to be sitting well above average in this stack and have a real shot at the 61,000. So I take my chips and I snap shove it in the middle, and I go with the big bluff here. Stanford takes 5 seconds, he calls me, breaks my heart, and shows the pocket kings. So, yep, that is how our journey ends today. We blast off 120 big blinds, and we're out of the tournament in level 5.
Stanford. Can't fuck with Stanford.
Alright, so we just busted from the high roller tournament. Pretty bad final hand, honestly. The 4 seed just checks it to me, and I have about 35,000, and I don't see him taking this line, checking the turn and river with a full house on the board. So at this point, I think he does have aces or kings, and with 45,000 in the pot and about 35,000 in my stack, he checks it to me on the river, and I have a decision between check and lose the pot or go for the all-in bluff. Try and fold out those hands with full houses on the board. I mean, I've called his 4-bet pre-flop, and I could very well have queens and 10s and have the full house there. So I go all in, and he called, and he had kings, so not the nuts, but we did not get him to fold, and yep, that's how I got knocked out. So I don't love the line. It's like way too risky for level 5 at the tournament. Like, I really wasn't gaining much by making that play against a player capable of making that call. So a little disappointing, but it is what it is. That's all I got. Thanks for watching, everyone. That was a crazy ending to vlog number 3. Those were some of the highest stakes hands I've ever played, And looking back, you know, it was a learning tournament for me. I was taking a shot, playing against some very good players, and, you know, I'm proud we entered in it and took a shot. If you're interested in some free coaching, I'm offering 3 packages. Shoot me a follow at Racer Poker on Instagram and shoot me a message. We'll meet for 3 hours over a few weeks and do some hand analysis and go over anything else poker related you're interested in. I took coaching for about a couple years and it helped my game out so much. So I'm really excited to be offering this to the community. If you're a rec player or somebody interested in the game, I'd really love to work with you. Thanks for watching again, everyone. Please hit the like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to the next vlog.